Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So this is a talk just after the middle of the retreat. 6 weeks have gone. Just almost 6 weeks are left of this retreat. Time travels very fast. So I hope everyone's putting forth the effort in one's meditation to be able to calm the mind down, to make it very peaceful, very, very strong, empower mindfulness, to see the truth, to see the Dhamma. When we say putting forth effort, I mean putting forth effort in the correct places, which is putting forth that effort into the knowing, into mindfulness, into being alert, and taking it away from doing, controlling, manipulating, which is where the effort should be focused. And if we focus the effort on that, we find that our mindfulness becomes very, very bright. And with that brightness comes happiness, and with that happiness nimittas arise. That's just the way of the mind. And sometimes that we need actually to understand exactly what's going on, to have insight into the whole process of the mind's relationships with its objects, in order to assist our development of not only calm and peace, but also the enlightenment which comes from that. As many of you know, when the Buddha taught the Dhamma in brief to Venerable Upali, he gave the same instructions to the first bhikkhuni, Mahapajapati, Gautami. He told both of these, and I think it's mentioned elsewhere as well in the suttas, that whatever Dhamma, also whatever things lead to upasama, which lead to peace, which also lead to sambodhi, to enlightenment. Sort of these things you can know, the Dhamma and the Vinaya of the Buddha, the teachings and the discipline of the Buddha. He said a few other things there as well, but those are the ones I'm really talking about, which lead to upasama and abhinya and sambodhi as well. Abhinya is this deep insight knowledge. Abhinya, just really understanding what's going on. And upasama is the tranquility, the peace, the calmness. And you can see whatever leads to these things is called Dhamma and Vinaya. And it's the one thing leads to both. So whatever leads to insight also leads to calm. Whatever leads to calm leads to insight. And as one notices the blockages in the mind through insight, if it's really an understanding, if it really is an insight, those blockages disappear straight away. And in particular, I want to focus on today's talk upon not so much the objects of your mind when you're meditating, but just how you view those objects. What I call that the relationship between the knower and the known. Because you may have found in your own practice of meditation, and you may have heard me say this, that sometimes you may have an object which doesn't seem to be all that conducive to still states of mind. It might be pain in the body, it might be a restless mind, it might be sounds outside of you which you take to be disturbing. And we have that restless mind, we have pain, we have sounds. That's called the known, the objects of consciousness. But we also have the knowing, that which knows. Not a person, not an ultimate reality, but just a process. But if we use that dichotomy of the knower and the known, and look at the relationship between those two, then in that relationship we can not only gain a lot of insight, but also gain a lot of peace as well, because looking at that relationship is Dhamma, it's Vinaya. And sometimes it's not so much what you're experiencing. It's not really so much the known, which is the problem, but it's how we look at it, our relationship to that object, which causes the problems. Because it's happened several times in my meditation, that when I've been meditating, sometimes the mind is restless, and I look at that restlessness. And I don't take the restlessness by itself to be the problem. Rather, I take the way I regard that restlessness to be the problem, the relationship to that mental object. So what I do is I make that relationship to restlessness pure and wholesome, and make it kusala. And you know what kusala is, what wholesome is. It's anything which is not following the path of the 5 hindrances. So if I'm watching my restless mind, and I've got craving, desire, to sort of keep it going, and that's usually why restlessness continues, is because there's something inside of us feeds that whole process. The mind isn't by itself of the nature to be restless. It's only when we feed it and keep it going. There's a power source there. There's a source of fuel, which we sometimes can't see. We haven't got the insight to see that. You couldn't call that fuel sort of interest, fascination, wanting to be something. Comes sometimes from fear. Whatever it is the source, we get involved. Our relationship to the restless mind is what causes it to keep on going. But if we watch that relationship rather than the object and just check those 5 hindrances, is desire there? If it is, cut it out. Don't worry about the object you're watching, but how you watch it. If there's ill will there, I don't want to be restless. Why am I restless? I'm supposed to be a meditator. I'm supposed to be an Ajahn. I shouldn't be doing this. If there's an ill will there, again the relationship to what you're experiencing is all wrong. It can never turn into a wholesome object. The restlessness can never stop that way. If there's sloth and torpor, you're not looking at it clearly enough. Or the restlessness means you can't really focus on it. You're just watching one object after the other. Or if there's doubt there, you're not quite sure what to do. It will never become quiet. If you take, say, an object like restlessness and have that which knows, just look at it without interfering, not wanting it to continue, not wanting it to stop, but just standing back, detaching, letting go of it, and being at peace with the restless mind. Having an armistice with the objects of your consciousness. Not trying to fix it, to force it, because that is fault-finding and more control. But just leaving it alone, letting go, detaching, meditating just for the sake of meditating, not even wanting the restless mind to stop, not even expecting something beyond that, not even hoping that one day one will get beyond restlessness. Having no desire, cravings, but just letting it be. And if that relationship to the restless mind is pure in this way, a relationship of peace, of acceptance, of loving kindness towards this mind, you will find, because the relationship is pure and wholesome, that the restless mind will never be able to sustain itself very long. If it's an unwholesome object, it's feeding from something. The object itself is almost like the result, the vipaka, of what you were doing before. You can't change that result, it's already here. But what you can change is your way you relate to it. So you don't make more unwholesome karma, which creates the more unpleasant vipaka. Karma is the cause, vipaka is the result. So if we've got that restless mind, it's restless right now, that's the vipaka. But right now I'm going to be looking at this with peace, with acceptance, with tranquility, letting it be, relinquishing, freeing. And if you do that, because when facing restlessness, your mind is pure, then you'll find that restlessness has to cease, it has to fade out, because you're not making any more mental karma. You're turning off the fuel. And it's fascinating when you do this. You're just restless and you think your meditation's all over the place. You can never get in a meditation, in this meditation sitting. You just check the relationship you have with what you're experiencing. Make it pure. And you find the restlessness sometimes disappears in a moment, in an instant. But at least it gets less and less and stops very, very quickly. Because you're not adding fuel to the fire of restlessness. Even to the point that restlessness takes the form of some fantasy or some lust or whatever. Just check the way that you are looking at that lust. Check your relationship to that mental object. You'll find that lust or fantasies will continue simply because you want them to. Your relationship to that is great, marvelous, keep going, I'm enjoying this, I want to see where this ends. You're feeding it. It's the relationship which is the thing to watch. The lustful thought which is there is come from the past, because you've encouraged it. You can't do much about that vipaka, but you can do something with the way you're relating to it. You can relate to it by not feeding it, by just standing back and just watching this. Standing back and watching it, you can actually experience, you can see, as the Buddha said, the gratification, the danger, and also the escape, because you're relating to it, as it were, from a distance. You are regarding it in a wholesome way. You're investigating it, rather than indulging it. So when you have these things come up in the mind, just watch how you're watching them. Look at the relationship between that which knows and the known. And if you see that there's something unskillful there, that's what you can stop very easily. You can turn that around. You can investigate. Very often anger and ill will is stopped that way. When we're angry at somebody or something, that we get so involved in the object of the anger, we can never even see this side of the anger, that which is experiencing this. But if you take that anger and create this beautiful duality of the known and the knower, and see just what connects the two, the relationship, how the knower regards the known, how that which knows regards anger. And you can see just there and then how you fuel that whole process called ill will. You get into it, you keep it going. But once you just stand back and just create a wholesome, a good, a pure, a Buddhist relationship to what you're experiencing, you just see the gratification, the danger, the escape, you see its impermanence, you'll see its ability to fade away. You let go, you detach, you make peace with anger. And when you make peace with anger, you're not trying to get rid of it, because that just adds fuel to the fire, that's adding oil to the fire. When you make peace with anger, you just watch. You find the anger just all disappears very, very quickly. It can't keep going, because you're looking at what you're doing with this. And even if it's noises outside, as Ajahn Chah said, it's never the noises disturb you, it's you disturb the noises. The noises have already come. But very often the relationship we have to those is, I don't want this, it shouldn't be like this. It's fault finding, it's complaining. It's not the noise itself, it's how we look at it. So these are examples of actually how we gain insight into what's happening in our meditation and what happens in our life. We're getting insight into the way to become peaceful and also insight into the way to become enlightened, because the two go together. Whatever's Dhamma and Vinaya leads to Upasama and Abhinya and Sambodhi. It leads to peace, it leads to insight, it leads to enlightenment. That's what the Buddha said. So as we look at the relationship between these things, we get a great skillful means in how to meditate, in how to gain these deep, still states of mind. Because whatever we're experiencing at any stage of the meditation, wholesome or unwholesome, The way to go further and deeper is actually to look not as the object, but look at the way we look at it. And if one is practicing well in the meditation, one say has got the breath in mind, how do you regard that breath? When the breath starts to remain in your mind, is it the case you feel satisfied, you feel happy, you feel, aren't I great? If you have that degree of pride and conceit in what you're doing, of course you can never go further. You're creating unwholesome karma. You're regarding what was created by wholesomeness in an unwholesome way. And no way can that meditation develop further. So you have to keep on creating the causes for deeper and deeper peace and deeper stability. And so always look at the causes. How are you doing your meditation? It's not so much what you're doing or what you've experienced, but how are you regarding this? And are you continuing it in such a way as to create wholesome causes all along the path? And if you're watching the breath and you're just at peace with that breath, you don't expect anything more because you don't have any wanting, that you are satisfied with the breath in the sense you're not trying to find fault with it, and it's comfortable because you're not trying to see all the things wrong with this breath. You make peace with it. You have an armistice with your breath. You just watch it, leaving it alone, giving your attention completely, fully to the breath, expecting nothing back in return. This beautiful thing in Buddhism which we call dana, pure dana, where you give expecting nothing back, no praise, no gifts, no name in headlines. You just give to the moment. You give to the breath. You just give to your meditation. It's a wholesome attitude, and that's why it works. You have loving kindness. You accept the breath as it is. The door of my heart is open to you, breath, no matter what you do, no matter how you feel. I embrace you. That's a wholesome way of regarding what you're experiencing. And as you regard what you're experiencing in this wholesome way, the objects get more and more refined, more and more peaceful. They're leading you deeper on the path into jhanas, and they're showing you the way to nibbana. And when that breath becomes very beautiful, if you regard that beautiful breath with excitement or fear, you can know that those are unwholesome ways of regarding things. If you regard them with, again, pride, it's great, I'm getting into the beautiful breath now, it will never go further. Very often the coarseness of the way we regard a beautiful breath sometimes is so gross that it destroys this very, very subtle and high state called the beautiful breath. So if a beautiful breath ever does come into your mind, take a little time to notice what one is doing with it, how one is regarding it, how one is making use of it, and make sure that that relationship between the knower and this beautiful breath is still in accordance with the Buddha's teachings. It is still pure and wholesome, and you're not allowing new bad karma which takes the form of hindrances or conceit or whatever, control, fault-finding or whatever, to actually impinge and destroy the whole process which you've set in motion. Once that beautiful breath becomes soft, if a nimitta comes up, it's really, really important at that time to make sure the way the knower looks at the known is very, very still. I've mentioned to you many, many times that when a nimitta comes up, that is a reflection of your mind. So if your mind starts to move in unwholesome ways, so does a nimitta. It moves also in unwholesome ways. It's a reflection, and this is the clearest way, or the clearest time probably you can actually check to see what your mind's up to. The beautiful nimitta which comes up, again, is the vipaka of all the purity which you've done, not just in your meditation, but in your lifestyle, in just how you eat your food, how you do your duties in the monastery, how you bow to the senior monk or to the Buddha, and just your gentleness around the other people in this monastery, whether they're guests or whether they're residents. That pure-heartedness is a great cause for the beautiful nimitta. But not just that, it's what you've been doing in the meditation as well. What you've been doing in the last half hour or 1 hour. And sometimes it's just so sad that we've done so much good work, so much purity, so much letting go, so much acceptance, so much making peace with the moment, so much good relationship between the knower and the known. And we've got into this beautiful state of letting go, and then we forget. We want to control. We want to sort of expect something more. We want to make. We want to build. When that sort of thing happens, we're creating bad karma, bad mental karma. It's unwholesome. It's not letting go. It's not being at peace with things. It's not liberating things. It's not being content. The way you're regarding it is the problem. So part of mindfulness always has to look at that. The way the mind regards those objects which it has to deal with. And when you see that that is the main source of the development of peace and even the development of jhanas, one sees that that's the way to develop happiness in one's monastic life, to free oneself from suffering. It's not what one has to deal with is the problem. It's not the objects of your life. It's the way you regard those objects. It doesn't matter if you're healthy or sick. It doesn't matter if you're the abbot or just the lowest anagarika. It doesn't matter the objects, it's how you deal with them. Your relationship from the knower to what you have to experience, the known. That's the problem. It doesn't really matter whether you're on retreat or you're working in the kitchen. It's how you regard that duty. So when you have to do duties of being on retreat or working in the kitchen, check on how you regard that object of consciousness called work or called retreat. When you're on retreat or working, are you relating to that with wholesome karma? Or are you relating that with unwholesome karma? When you're on retreat, you try and sort of squeeze out as much time as possible. And when you're working, you try and get it over with so you don't have to do anything else. How are you regarding what you're doing? And if you look at that, sometimes you can see just how it's very, very unskillful. And you can understand why the path doesn't work at those times. If you're on retreat, you have to be peaceful. If you're expecting something to happen, if you want something to happen, if you're planning for something to happen, if you're striving for something to happen, you're not relating to retreats in a wholesome way. You have to retreat from all of those unskillful ways of reacting to phenomena. You've made such wonderful karma that you've got to the point of being on retreat and having nothing to do, being in your hut all the time. What are you doing with that? How are you regarding it? How are you relating to it? You may have the most wonderful opportunity, but that's just the object. It's how we regard it, how we relate to it. That's the most important thing. So you can really screw up a retreat very easily. And you can really just make such a wonderful, peaceful time of working in the kitchen, if you know how to regard that well. To regard that as just giving for the sake of giving, of just being at peace with whatever comes up, not adding to the problems. As you all know, I've just come back from Singapore, been teaching a retreat. The last couple of days it got more busy than I would have expected, simply because at the last question and answer time on, Monday evening, the retreat finished on Tuesday afternoon. On Monday evening that people had all these questions and spent from 7 p.m. till 10 p.m. answering those questions. in the public forum. He was very busy. And the following day, which was Tuesday, yesterday, giving a talk in the morning at the retreat, and then a concluding talk in the afternoon, and then another public talk in the evening. So many talks there. But I know just how to deal with that. It's not what I have to do is the problem. It's what I think about that, how I regard that, my relationship to my duties as a teacher. That's the point, and that's where I put my focus. And that's where I do my work. My work of being at peace with this. My work of allowing this to be when I can't really do much about it. It's not sometimes what I plan, but I leave it alone. I make my peace with it. I don't have expectations or ill will towards these things. Because if I had ill will to what I had to do, it's an unwholesome way of relating to the known. If I had expectations and desire of what I want to get out of teaching or giving a public talk, I'm relating unskillfully to that object. I have to always relate properly to the things which I have to do, as I have to relate properly to the tiredness which is sometimes in my body. Just leave it alone. Make my peace with it. Allow myself to be tired without having ill will or wanting it to be different. I give up. I let go. I am content. And with that right relationship to what I have to do, you always have very, very deep meditation in the most unexpected of times. I mentioned sometimes before that in my life as an abbot of this monastery, sometimes I have to work so hard to the point that you come back here one evening and you've just been working all day, just so tired, exhausted, according to the standards of the world. I just go back into my room, look at that exhaustion, and relate to it properly. It's fascinating just how much truth is in the saying that the mind is a chief, is the forerunner of all things. It's so powerful, because you can abolish that tiredness just in a moment. You can just send it to oblivion, just with the right attitude of being at peace with these things. You're creating this powerful good karma, which completely overcomes the past vipaka and replaces it with new vipaka. Because you're doing good karma, powerful karma, with letting go, with renunciation, doing the things which the Buddha asked one to do. This is powerful stuff. No matter how much tiredness is there, it just goes. No matter how much pain there is there in the body, where you regard the pain, that's the problem. We all have pain. That's the nature of a body. That's the nature of life. Old age, sickness and death. Never getting what you want, separated from what you like, being with what you don't like. It's the nature of phenomena. It's how we regard that. That's where we can make the difference between being an Aryan and being a Puthujjana. Being a noble one, or just being an ordinary person like the common person in the street. So when we have pain, disappointment, restlessness, even lust, have a look at how you relate to that. Look to see if you're creating skillful attitudes towards these things. So these old stuff disappears very quickly. Or are you regarding it in an unwholesome way? You see, that unwholesome way we regard things is called craving. It's called like the fuel, the upadana, which keeps these things going and going. It's a bad karma, the bad mental karma. Or sometimes it goes off into bad speech and bad actions. You're creating more problems for yourself and for the world. And those problems come up in a lack of happiness. It's beautiful to see just with this insight into what the problem really is, where it is. It's not in the object. You'll never find the best monastery, you never find the best teacher, you never find the best monastery, you never even find the best nimitta, if you're always looking for it. This thing you've got now, how do you regard this? If you regard this as beautiful, the nimitta just appears out of nowhere. It's just like that simile of the lotus with 1,000 petals. You don't have to go anywhere to open up that lotus. You just have to stay put. Whatever you're experiencing, just be at peace with it. The way you regard this, to regard this with a sense of giving, not expecting anything in return, liberality, love, acceptance. This is good enough. Contentment. When you're watching a leaf of a lotus, if this is good enough, you're regarding it in a pure way. It doesn't matter how dirty and grubby that lotus leaf is. No matter even how sort of painful and hard to bear it is. If you keep your mindfulness on it, with acceptance, with purity, this beautiful mindfulness, that grubby, even detestable lotus leaf will open out. It will open up, and underneath that dirty old lotus leaf will be the pure leaf, or the pure sort of petal rather. And if you get excited at that pure petal, everything closes up again. So the way you regard even the pure petals should be exactly the same way as you regard the really unpleasant petals, if you really want to get progress in meditation and in life. It's how you regard the things, how you look at them. To look at them without craving, without this unwholesome karma, without wanting to control it, just leaving things alone. When you start to do this, the lotus opens up petal by petal, and you don't have to do anything except just watch. Be still and make sure that the way you watch is pure and wholesome and stable and not sort of shaken by hindrances or defilements or by bad karmic methods. And when you do this, it's incredible just how quickly the whole thing can happen. Just the whole lotus can turn from this grubby little old thing which you think has got no promise at all into the beautiful inner petals of a lotus. So refined. You can be in pain. You can have fever. You can be tired. The objects you've got to work with seem like real rubbish. But it's how you work with them. And it's that attitude, that relationship with your task, with the object you have to deal with. If that is correct, then everything just goes so smoothly and so well. And so you start to learn in the way of meditation, not just how to gain the jhanas. You start to learn because you use this path into peace, into serenity, just as an example about how to deal with life. Whatever you have to deal with, the people around you, so the body you're in, the weather, the requisites. How are you dealing with all of this? How are you dealing with, in the sense, I'm just going to give for the sake of giving, don't expecting anything. When I give a talk, I just expect to give a talk, don't expect people to like it or not like it. I don't expect people to cheer or to boo. I don't expect anything. Just give for the sake of giving. Content, no matter how well you perform. Doesn't matter if it's a good talk or a bad talk, because I give it my best shot every time. Sometimes the causes aren't there, so I don't worry about the object, my experience of teaching. You regard that with peace, with contentment. In that way, you are still with the world. You're not making bad karma with the objects of the mind, with the duties, with the situation you find yourself with. And that way, that all those problems just vanish. And you actually start to see what this is. And we don't need to have the perfect situation. If we needed to have the perfect situation and become enlightened, the devas would become enlightened. The reasons why the devas cannot become enlightened or find it so difficult to become enlightened, because the experiences, the objects of their consciousness are just so lovely. It's hard for them to regard those objects with peace. They regard those objects with indulgence, sometimes even with conceit. Look at me, just how great I am, just how powerful, how much fun, how much energy, how much beauty, how much happiness I have. So easy to do that, to regard one's deva realms in the wrong, unskillful way. One has got to those deva realms because of beautiful good karma, and now the way one regards that vipaka is unwholesome. And it's going to mean that you're going to fall from those realms. You're going to destroy your happiness, your power, your peace. That's why the deva realms fall apart, or rather devas fall from those realms. And if you're using the lower realms, the realms of the animals based on fear, the lower realms of them, the hell realms based on pain, how do you regard that pain? If one was in a hell realm experiencing excruciating pain, and one said to that pain, the door of my heart's open to you, come in. You regarded that pain in a skillful way. That being would end their time in hell and would disappear and go up into another realm. It's the way they regard what they're experiencing keeps that hell burning. It's not what they're experiencing, but how they regard it. So we call that craving, desire, karma chanda, ill will. That's what burns. And when you've got such strong ill will or such strong craving, the flames are just so hot, one is roasting. And it can be ended so easily, just with a change of mind, a change of way of looking, a change of regarding this thing which we call samsara, or the five khandhas. And one sees that this is the way out of pain and suffering in the moment, in life, in a monastery or in the household. And it's also the way out of samsara, the way out. In other words, the way to nibbana. When we cultivate the proper attitudes, samma sankappa, second factor of the Eightfold Path. It's not what we're experiencing, but how we regard that. We regard that with nekama sankappa, renouncing, giving up. Don't care what we're experiencing. We just give up controlling, give up wanting, give up all the unwholesome ways of dealing with this, whatever this happens to be. This could be the most pleasant moment. Be careful to regard it properly. It may be the most unpleasant experience you've ever had to bear with. Regard it properly. Always remember samma sankappa. First of all, nekama sankappa. And the second one is, and I'm going to remember myself, reminding that, it's not with vyapada. I'm going here for the micca sankappa. Vyapada is like with ill will. And the last one with vihingsaka, which means like with almost like violence, wanting to destroy things. No matter what you're experiencing, if you want to try and destroy it, if you have anger towards it, then you're creating the causes for more pain, for more suffering. But if you have the samma sankappa, which is with nekama, with just renunciation, with is it metta or karuna? I think metta first and then karuna. The metta is just the freeing, the door of my heart's open to you. And the karuna is seeing that suffering and just having the proper attitude towards it. Because some of life is suffering, some of it is hard to bear. But it's how we deal with that. If we deal with that with samma sankappa and we have this compassion towards it, then we're creating the good karma for these things, for these things to disappear. This present moment, this present vipaka, the thing we have to deal with, we understand it's not the problem. It's how we regard it. And where one understands that, one understands about life, one stops complaining and fault-finding about the things one has to do in the monastery or in life. One stops complaining or fault-finding with this body. It's not fair, I'm sick, I'm old. all these other young monks, well, they're so lucky. We stop complaining. One works with what one has, because it's the attitude to what one has is a problem. And one can always change the attitude. Now one has got an old body or a sick body. Now one may have restlessness, or one may have tiredness. You can't change that. You're stuck with it for the time being, but how do you regard that? What are you doing with it? How's your sankappa towards that? The attitude towards it. If you work on that and purify that, you find that that is a path to freedom, to liberation and to ending of things. Because you try that out in meditation, it gets you into the deep meditation just so easy. Sometimes you're meditating, you're trying this and trying that and nothing's working. Because you're just watching the object, trying to change the object, never changing the way you regard it. That's why it never works. But then you see the point, you get their insight, you get the penny drops, what you're doing wrong, why it never works. It's not the thing you're experiencing, it's how you're experiencing it. Your sankappa, your attitude. When you get the attitude correct, you just let it go. Be at peace with it. Make an armistice. Be content. Good enough. Stop wanting perfection. This is good enough. That sort of samma sankappa attitudes, the renunciation, liberating just this wanting, controlling mind, living all alone, liberating what you're experiencing, allowing samsara just to be, without you trying to control it. And say the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta, this is just what sankharas do. If they could be controlled, the Buddha said, then there would be a self there. And it wouldn't be a problem, wouldn't be an abhada, which is like what's that word? It's like a suffering, it's like a problem, like a burden, like an affliction. That was the word I was looking for. But because these things are an affliction, because this monastery is an affliction, because your body is an affliction, because listening to a talk is an affliction, because meditating is an affliction. How you're watching it, how you're doing it, stops all the pain. It's the end of affliction, when you leave affliction alone. When we do this, we find that it's so easy to get deep meditation. We just stop. Stop trying to change the world, trying to change the mind. Stop the complaining. Stop the grouching. Just accept and be at peace. Stop the bad mental karma. Just completely be silent. Be silent in the noise, and then the noise fades away. Being happy in the pain, and the pain just vanishes. Just being still on that dirty old leaf, or petal rather, of the lotus, the most uninspiring, unpromising lotus leaf, lotus petal which you can ever imagine. And right underneath it is the most beautiful one. You don't have to do anything. Just stay. Be at peace. Stop the war. And then the whole thing opens up. You find, that's the way to get deep inside. That's the way of peace. When you do this, you may have been meditating for an hour or 2 hours, think you're getting nowhere, and suddenly you see, and then just bliss comes right through your body. It just goes into your mind and you lose your body. And you're just on that roller coaster, sliding into jhanas. You can't stop it. You've got the attitude right. You press the letting go button. You've seen the problem, the way we relate to the mind, the way we relate to the world. When we relate to it correctly, everything falls into place. We know the third noble truth, ending of craving. It's not ending of the objects, it's the ending of the way we relate to them. That's the end of suffering. That's the way into jhanas. That's the end of all of this. This is what we're here for, and that's the goal. Or rather, that's the end. So that's a little talk this evening, focusing on another aspect of meditation, another aspect of Dhamma, the way you relate to what you're experiencing right now. The end of the talk.